get started. So, welcome back to the channel, everyone. We are here with Nelson, and he came top 4 at the most recent Brisbane One Piece Regionals. So, the memorable thing about this was he came top 4 with an off-meta deck, but I'll let him explain it from here. Take it away.
Hello everybody. I'm Nelson. I'm also known in One Piece as Hados623 and other online personalities such as N-Quad10 and Doomslayer623. So to start us off, we're playing Koala.
Yeah, Koala.
Yeah, we're playing Koala this regional. I've been a big sort of deck builder for a long time, and when I entered the set, I think everyone was hyped for this leader, but then when people played the leader, it was underperforming to people's expectations, so people dropped it completely. And I initially had the same thought, but after seeing some inspiration from Japanese players and some European flagship tournaments, I sort of eventually got some inspiration to play it again. And during playtesting and several local tournament wins, I was very surprised at how well the leader was performing, especially against our local meta in Australia. So with Koala, well, we'll explain the leader skill too much, but it is a big win condition for the deck. The main downside is having to attack the opponent's leader with your leader to get the card draw, but most of the time you actually are trying to out-resource your opponent, so you don't actually matter. It doesn't even matter if you're wasting a swing at a leader, even if your opponent is a 6k leader. And a lot of the top leaders being played these days are 6k or buffed leaders, yes? Okay, well first, we are playing a Dressrosa and Revolution Army leader, but unfortunately the funny Dressrosa version build of this leader doesn't really work too much because a lot of the Dressrosa cards are not effective A costs, which is anti-synergy of the leader. So of course we're going to start with our deck profile here. We have our searchers. We're playing Revolution Army, so we have in the yellow and black pool, we only have access to black Rebel searchers at the moment. So we have 4 copies of the Koala searcher, of course, and 4 copies of the event searcher, Captains Assembled and Koala. Right, Koala, important to note is that it can't grab Koala, but can grab Nika Robin, and Nika Robin is not Revolution Army, which is what most people aren't really aware of. Also very important from trash manipulation, so you should be careful about that. And then Captains Assembled is the event, which also trashes 3. Right, you want to prioritize the event searcher if you can, because because it puts itself in the bin when you play it, similar to when you play Blackbeard, and you want to be able to return 3 rev army types to the bottom of your deck when you play A-Class Dragon, one of your major win conditions. Next we have the sort of essential, the quote-unquote mid-game of this deck, which is all carried by Hack, the 4-cost blocker, the very, very strong card, right? This card would have been even stronger if the Zoro leader was not printed to rest original cost. Because this is your 4-cost effective 8-cost blocker, which KOs an original 4-cost as well. So if you ever burst the mirror, you can kill itself as well. And it gets around a lot of things. It gets around Shanked Lucky Roo. It's basically the more balanced version of Lucky Roo in a sort of black format. But it is very evasive. But you do want to avoid blocking this quickly, unless you're bursting Bonnie or something, because when you burst Bonnie, this card will be rested forever, because they don't want you to explode the blockers, the Tashigis, right? So just cash in fast versus Bonnie. Most of the time you want to save it to activate your leader skill. The next part of the mid game of this deck, especially if going first, is actually, and what makes this version of the build completely run in general, is the 5-cost Nami. Right, and a very important 4-off, which is unsearchable, but it doesn't matter in this deck, right? So a lot of times, this is what carries this engine here, and a lot of the triggers you're running is actually black-based. This is not a very yellow-based deck, actually. But Nami, right, the moment it goes into your bin, it can be revived with your main win conditions like 8-cost Dragon, and having it in your hand is also important versus a lot of decks, because I think removal is genuinely stepped up in this format. To accompany your mid-game, if you ever don't see double search, one searcher or Hack or Nami in your first 2 turns, you can play this sad Karasu blocker down. I actually found this from a European deck list, running this sort of combo together, and well, this Karasu is mostly a high roll trade situation. You don't want to play it out very often unless unless you're just very bricked, right? But importantly, it has a trigger to synergize with the Nami effect, and I did actually win 2 distinct games over the 17 games I played by triggering this in my life. So, you can always hit a higher moment. You can maybe add more of this if you want to play for the big gamble. Next we have the 2K counter package. This thing is here. We have the 2K counter package here. So we're running 11 2Ks today. we ran 11 2Ks in the event. We run 4 Kumas because it is just the most important 2K counter for Revolution Army. Rev searchable. It's a cheap body if you're combined under 5 life, and that's pretty much it. The fact that it has a trigger is really important to synergize with Nami, of course. You can ditch it. You can ditch it for Nami, and also cheap body in some matchups. But be careful to not trigger this versus UP Luffy and stuff like that, because this card will just die on the field most of the time. And if you can't swing 5 into 6, you pretty much just want to keep it in your hand. The next 2K counters is actually Baby 5. And this, I think, surprised a lot of people over the weekend. Baby 5 was something, again, I saw from Japanese and European players who were playtesting this version of the build. Right? It has a trigger, which is important for the Nami synergy. And also, people found that, well, from my testing and what I heard from other people were expecting Beige to be the best 2K counter slot for Yellow, but Baby 5, the expected value of this card is generally higher, because with Beige, it's meant to be the Zoro counter, but a lot of times the Zoro is going to attack your board first and then attack your leader. So unless they're going for lethal and trying to restand the leader through your life, the Beige is not going to see any value. You're not going to be able to stop another attack. Whereas Baby 5 can always draw you into more value. Right? It's a 2K counter and it draws 2, right? And most of the time, if you need the 2K counter to live guaranteed and you don't trigger it, like 95 times out of 100, you want to trigger this to draw extra cards, right? And a lot of times you get this early in your life, so pretty good stuff. And then the other 2K counters, we're just running more Rev Army stuff. So we're running 1 Morley. This is just a generic 8-cost body, right? I was not even going to run this. Honestly, I was not going to run this card at all in my build, but I drew the release event version at JoJo's at a release event, so I decided to run a single one of it. But, funnily enough, I did play this card down a single time over the 17 games I played. And it became an 8-cost body, for my leader skill to activate quickly because I didn't see Hacking Curve, so it actually came up. And then next we have 2 Bella Betties, the 2K counter. So this one is not an 8-cost body, which makes it less ideal, but I have played this, I didn't use it over the weekend, but I did win a local event with this card before versus the Kuzan leader and some other leaders that run 7 costs, because this is a trash 2 cards from the top of your deck to -2 cost for something. And also the trashing 2 cards is important if you're bricked and don't see your searches, essentially. Right? This is kind of a searcher for your bit. Right? And yeah, like essentially it's really good against decks that run 6 and 7 cost bodies, which isn't a lot these days, by the way. But when it comes up, right, you basically leave this active the entire time. You turn it sideways to give -2 cost, and then you play Nami to KO a 5 cost, right? You actually have some sort of cost reduction in your deck, just a little bit. Right, then we have the main win condition of the deck, the main engine, the whole reason you play this deck, right? Which is the awesome Dragon card, the 8-cost Dragon. What a lot of people don't know. Okay, before I talk about this card, we'll talk about the other 6-cost bodies. We've got running 3 Nico Robins and 4 Kumas. Right, so I think everyone knows what Kuma does. It's the most expensive card, most expensive secret of this set. Right, and Kuma, right, you're trashing a card to heal, and with your leader skill, you're basically, when you play down Kuma, you usually have a hack on your board or some sort of effective 8-cost. Right, when you play it through with Dragon, you have 2 8-costs on the board, so you can essentially attack your opponent's leader with your leader to draw your card back if they trash with this. So you've gone card neutral on playing this card, essentially. Right? But a lot of times you need to set up your grave so that you have 1 of Robin or Kuma into your bin and 1 in your hand. And if you don't have it set up, when you play this on 6, or you play Robin on 6, you trash the other in your bin to set up for this play. Right? Robin is also a very important win condition, but picking between the 2 is very important on your matchups. Right? In matchups where you're going to die quickly, you want to play Kuma, like Rayleigh, when matchups you die quickly, you want to play Kuma. When you outlast your opponent, then you can outscale them for sure, like Kalgara, Rayleigh, other generic aggro decks, Green, Blue, Zoro, Sanji. Right? You want to prioritize this card all the time. But versus decks that you need to be the one aggressing, you need to win quickly, the ones that can outscale you, like Shanks, like Bonnie, you want to try and prioritize playing out Robin as often as you can. Also, something that's important about Robin is that versus UP Luffy, Robin is always 9 cost, so they can't Sanji Mihawk you. But this becomes a 6 cost after 1 turn, so if they get a Sanji Mihawk play off to bottom deck your Kuma, you're pretty screwed on that turn. Right, and then we have the win condition Dragon, the 8-cost Dragon. Right, so the condition is to return 3 Rev Army cards to the bottom of your deck. to play any 6 cost or below. And this is something a lot of people don't know about. Right? I think the lack of knowledge from a lot of players over the weekend stole me some of those wins. Right? Essentially, you want to bring back obviously these 2 targets. This is just the highest value target, your Kuma and your Robin. Right? And you want to ask your opponent if there are 5 cards, bring back the Robin. But what's important is that the Robin is not a Revolution Army type card, so you cannot bottom deck this in your bin, right? So you do need to actually have 3 Rev Army cards, and ideally you want to play this, you don't want to return this. And usually at this point, if you only have 1 Searcher, for example, right, it's really important, you want to counter out early with this card, or ideally this card if you can. Right. If you're ever sitting on 2k counters, and you have a baby 5 and your Kuma in your hand, you want to counter with the Kuma all the time. Right. First of all, it gives your opponent less info, so they might not know you're running this card. But second of all, it adds a Rev Army card to your grave. Right. But the more important part about this deck is deciding whether to play one of these 2 cards to sustain longer, or to play for removal, which is essentially what Nami does. Right. I've won countless games over the weekend with Dragon Nami combos. Right. The downside of playing this is that you might not get to use your leader skill. You might not get to use leader skill to draw a card because you don't always have a hack on the board already, or a Robin on the board already, so you don't have 2 8 costs on board. But the removal aspect, shooting 2 bodies and removing one of your opponents is like Ekamori was super powered back in the day. Right? The tempo swing of developing 2 bodies, even if the Nami is a 5k, if there's 2 bodies and then removing one of your opponents is so game-winningly massive. Right, and then lastly we have some utility cards. So we have the counter events. We're running 2 Waxing Fists. You could argue you could run more of this, but I just think a searchable 1-cost 4k counter is just very important in the meta. People are swinging very high these days. Right, just gotta make sure that if you only have Robin on board, that this is not a 4k counter, because Robin is not a Revolution Army type, even though it is 8 costs. Right, and then we have the GOAT, the greatest of all time counter card, Black Vortex. I think everyone is sort of seeing this as the new go-to, every full black deck must-have card. Right. Originally designed for Blackbeard, but the minus 4k for the turn is obviously very important for Zoro and any sort of restanding card. So 9 cost Zoro, 6 cost Secret Luffy, anything that can swing more than once, right? Which isn't a lot these days. Secret Luffy, 9 cost Zoro, and the Zoro leader is what you're looking for to try and give minus 4 to most of the time, right? But you want to also make use of the nullified leader effect. Also, you can actually run 3 to 4 of this card in this deck specifically, because even though this card can brick very often, it has a trigger, which is the important part. The trigger lets you trash it with Nami, so in most matchups where you don't need the counter events, this combo you can actually remove your bricky vortexes with Nami. And if you go down low enough in hand size, which you might sometimes, like playing Robin and Nami very often, you can draw the card back with Nami's effect, of course. Right. But very, very, very important to know that. Also, my highlight of the weekend for sure was my top 8 match versus Blackbeard. Right, the Blackbeard played in top 8. On my 7th Dawn turn, I deliberately played Hack over Robin, developing a Robin, to save 2 Dawn up to this card. So the opponent ended up not using his leader skill before attacking, and I played Black Vortex to turn off Blackbeard's leader skill, so he couldn't turn off my on-play. And then next turn, I had a Dragon Kuma play ready, because he couldn't turn off the on-play, and won the game instantly from there. I remember listening to the entire crowd explode and sort of like, oh my god, the Blackbeard got Blackbearded! It was really good. You had to be there to see it. Alright, then we have the last sort of tech cards in the deck. So I'm running 2 5-costs on top of the Nami, but most of the time you want to see Hack and Nami in your 4 to 6 Dawn turns. Or 4 and 5. 6 you want to play these 2. But 4 and 5 Dawn turns you want to see these 2 cards. And I'm running a 1-off Sabo blocker because it's Revenant Armor searchable. This card only comes up versus Lucci, honestly, versus Lucci and any sort of heavy removal based deck. Like control Shanks, I guess. Like Shanks can play Beckman around this. But because you're playing a black deck, a lot of times you'll see this card in your bin. So if you don't have, for example, you don't have Robin, or you don't have Kuma in your bin, this is like your next best option to revive. And also draw 2 trash 2, you can put 2 more bricks in your bin. So you pretty much only ever play this card after you have a full board. And you need to just stall one more time to go for game. But I think over the weekend, I didn't play this card out a single time. I didn't versus any Lucci or Shanks players. The Steel Monkey counter Revolution Army, a lot of times this is just what goes in the bin, what goes in my deck for Dragon's Effect. The other 5 cost, which does come up very often surprisingly, is this Karasu. This Karasu is very good in matchups like Blue Kuzan, which I didn't verse, and UP Luffy. It's the one that destroys people's hands, and if you have a Robin platform, if they held 7 cards, and you make Robin trash 2, this can make trash an additional 1. the resource loss of your opponents is humongous. And also, this is just a card you play on 5 Dawn if you're going first. But ideally, you want to go second every single game. But when you go first and you have this on turf, it's pretty nice. A lot of times this will be in your grave as well. It's the same reason as Sabo. These 2 cards will more than likely be in your bin because you want to search for a different target with your searches most of the time, like this guy, and this guy, and this guy, and Dragon, of course. So it's just something that's there if you ever come across it. One can kind of fodder most of the time. Right, and then my last 3 tech options is the 8-cost Katakuri and 2 10-cost aces. So this one has been iffy. I think most lists I saw in Europe and Japan they were running the 7-cost Sabo, which has a draw 2 trigger, or just more trigger cards in general. But I was always thinking that this deck lacked additional plays if you ever missed Dragon. If you ever somehow didn't draw into this, you couldn't find this by 8 on turn. But missing this is pretty huge, right? So I was thinking of other solutions, and to me, I think Katakuri was actually the most interesting decision because basically anything that your opponent plays that's 8 cost or over, you can leader skill to sort of punish them, depending on the deck. Right. And anything they play that's 8 cost or under, right, or if it's 8 specifically, you can leader skill and play this, and anything that's under 8 cost, you play this to get rid of to move to the life. Right. Move to the bottom of the life. The tempo loss is really insane, and it's 8 cost body if you leader skill to activate. And I basically put one of this for the Shanks matchup, for the Shanks and Bonnie matchup. Because in Bonnie, you can life the kids, the useless kids, and they usually run 1 or 2 of it at max these days because they want to play 8-cost Mihawk instead. Right. This is a very good kind of a kid, as well as the 7-cost Newgate that Shanks players are running. 7-cost Newgate is pretty annoying to deal with because you can't really swing into it, so this is your main option. But honestly, I was thinking of running 2 or 3 of this, but I only played this card a single time in my entire 17 games, and that was versus Bonnie in top 16. So when it came up as intended, but you either run more of this or none of it at all. I was really trying it out most of the time. And then the last card is 10-cost Ace. Right, a lot of decks aren't running this. I didn't see a single deck list run this at all, actually, personally. And it is a little risky, to be honest, because when you play this, you don't have any done up for Black Sting's Fist or Black Vortex if you say draw into it with a leader skill, or it's in your last 2 life, yeah? But a lot of times I found myself missing the additional heal, the additional turn stall to win the game. Right. Because you have control elements on this deck, but you're not playing full control, essentially, because your leader has to attack your opponent's leader to get value. So a lot of times you're sort of draining your opponent's hand size down by attacking their leader and making them take life aggressively, so they have to counter for the leader all the times. So because of that, right, it's like you can usually try and stay. You want to try and play Ace specifically when you're 1 life, obviously to get the rush aspect. But when you're sitting around 2 life and like 5-6 cards in hand, right, and if your 10-cost rush clears like a 7k or 6k body on your opponent's board, you're usually pretty safe from death. And if you're not safe from death, you just play for the gamble, right? You just play for the fact that you don't draw one of these 2 from your life, and you have a maybe 5 trigger or something, right? You are playing yellow deck with like 20-something plus triggers, so you do have to get lucky sometimes, I guess. And that brings me to the end of my long decklist breakdown. So
that was amazing. Thank you so much
so far, and I hope to see more representation in the future from you guys.
Yes. Before you do go, show us what you won for coming top 4.
Top 4? Yeah. Unfortunately, this set they didn't have top 4 exclusive prices. This is all top 8. Right, all top 15 players got the finalist pack of this. The finalist pack set for the regional prize, so this would have been the...
Yeah, show the camera.
This would have been the Trafalgar Law, the Kid Killer finalist.
Nice.
And I believe the 5+6k Bonnie that can't be removed. And the last card was... I think it's the 5/7 Vanilla Chocolate. That's
nice.
Yellow.
Nice.
The top 64 card is the Yasop. The top 64 Yasop from the Shanks deck. The top 16 is the Ben Beckman. And then top 8 you got the Serial Ace, which I currently not opened, but it's the 10-cost. It is this card in the serial format.
Oh.
The serial format. And then the 10-cost 12k Rush Shanks that everyone hated so much in OP9.
Nice. Congratulations, man. It was a massive achievement, especially with an off-meta deck. So, props to you. You were on fire this weekend. I watched a few of your games and it was crazy. So hopefully we see more of you on the channel with more Top Cut profiles.
Hopefully.
Yes.
I'm very keen.
Alrighty. Thanks for the deck profile. Catch you in the next one.
Thank you.